IFX, which is now focusing on VFX supervisors. We are underrepresented people representing, and we are here. Want to introduce our amazing panel, which spotlights on Sheena Dougal, Greg Anderson,
hi everyone,
Roberts, Leslie Chung, Earl Herbert, Aaron Holly, and Maricel Pagulayan. So we're going to be talking about things that affect our industry. I hope you had a chance to see their amazing featurettes for their stories and how they got this far. So we're going to dive right in. Greg, I'm going to start with you. What was the transition like to supervisor from your point of view, looking back? And did this transition happen at an appropriate time in line with your other colleagues of similar experience?
No, I think I had to force the issue, as you know. It was pretty clear in the company I was at that it would probably take me a couple of decades to get, a shot. And so I left and went to another company to, get a promotion that I, thought I was ready for. And then after that, I moved to 2 other companies. I just basically kept moving until I could, get to the level that I needed to, because it was pretty clear that despite my success, it was going to be a very long road. And I just found that it was people that didn't know me were willing to give me more of a shot than the people I came up with, which, I really didn't know what that was about, but it was, that was the route I had to take to kind of make it happen for myself.
Yeah, that's great. Sheena, in your experience, did you feel that you were given the support that you needed to succeed?
Am I muted? No, I'm good.
Good.
Well, it's a really complicated question to answer, actually, because I started out as a flame artist, and I was also an executive in the company running a department when I became a visual effects supervisor. And I got there because lots of people gave me opportunity to get there. Mostly Ken Rolston sort of took me under his wing and helped me, as you guys were all there. And that sort of happened because I think I was just lucky that he recognized talent, and I was very persistent, and not everybody has that look, and not everybody gets those opportunities and gets that person who will go above and beyond to actually, help you and move you forward. But interestingly, as soon as I kind of went into that role of being a visual effects supervisor, and I wasn't hands-on anymore, I was reporting to somebody who had a toxic masculinity problem in terms of they needed to dominate and they needed to control. And I think that, we all encounter that, not just women, not just people of color like other men. I think there is an issue with this sort of dominance and control in our industry. And so what happened was I got promoted to be a visual effects supervisor in 1998, believe it or not. And then I systematically watched the people who had worked for me and come up past me and get opportunities I didn't get. And that happened sort of systematically, I'd say, throughout the 2000s. And that also coincided with big business, becoming something that was operating within visual effects as well. So as it became a bigger business, the higher paid jobs became more reserved for the white men in the company, and women got less opportunities. And of course, some women fell out of the workforce because they had children and there was no space for them to get back in again. So, it's a complicated question. If you're going to fight, for exploitation, you really need to realize, when you're being exploited. And I don't really think that we did at that time. We were just so happy and passionate about what it was we were doing. And I think everyone's got somewhat of a similar story. But yeah, I mean, it's good. There was good and bad. There were people who helped and there were people who obstructed.
Yeah, that's great. Andrew, I'm going to send this to you. So have you seen or not seen a positive increase in diversity within your field and the industry as a whole?
At the VFX soup level, it's quite rare to see much diversity. I think it's happening. It is happening, but slowly. But that isn't something that happens organically, you know. It requires some focused, deliberate attention and preparation and nurturing, you know. I'm thinking about some of the sort of mid-sized vendors. You know, they have a small amount, you know, sort of a small slate of films that they're working on, and they need to feel comfortable that, you know, they can entrust that show to a new supervisor, you know, to someone that isn't sort of one of their, you know, sort of handful of suits that they typically, you know, give work to. And so then that requires some sort of intentional, you know, focus and support to help bring someone to a level where they then can feel confident. I think sort of across the industry, though, there is a lot more diversity. And if you're looking at the artist level, lead artist, and then, you know, say games, streaming, you know, across those other areas, that there is a lot more diversity.
Well,
and when you think about sort of the, you know, availability of, say, sort of software and online training, you know, sort of non-traditional means for people to become educated and to put themselves in a position to, you know, have those qualifications. Those are some of the reasons, I think, for that diversity, because it's not, well, I was educated at this school, or I, you know, this person gave me, you know, sort of let me in the evenings, you know, to sort of work on their, on that workstation. And that's how I acquired those skills. That, you know, a lot of that access has been democratized. And so, you know, more people are able to, you know, pick up a copy of, you know, Maya or Blender or Houdini and sort of build their skills up. And so, and then also I think that diversity is being helped by the fact that a lot of facilities, you know, they would either look for qualifications, but often they will say, you know, or, you know, equivalent experience. So I think a lot of that is helping the industry, but there's still, I think there's some heavy lifting to go at the senior level.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Aaron, I'm going to throw this to you. Do you believe your voice has been given as much value as your colleagues during your career?
Yeah, I actually do. You know, I think I feel fortunate that, you know, in the roles that I've had and some of the shows I've worked on, you know, a lot of times sitting with the directors and producers, studio side, that I think being in that position, like I felt that I was trusted for, you know, my input and also the area I focus in. Like I'm probably the sole non-VFX soup on the panel. I've worked as a character supervisor. And our work tends to be a bit more black boxy throughout the pipeline.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've always felt that, you know, my voice was heard, you know, even within large studios, where there are times where, you know, I would get direction from the VFX suit. You know, for instance, like once I got direction from Joe Lettieri, and a lot of times people would just jump and run. And I told him, I'm happy to work on this, but this is here's the anatomical reference that I used for this. This is why I made this decision. And instantly got a message back like, oh, okay, he looked at that, understands your decision, and just keep going with the direction that you're going. Yeah. So, yeah, throughout my career, I've always felt that, you know, that I have had, you know, say, and people have taken it, you know, seriously and respected my experience.
That's great. Leslie, how about you? The same question. Do you believe your voice has been given as much value as your colleagues during your career?
I do feel like my voice has been given as much importance as other colleagues in my career. I think I've been very lucky in that I think because I have been a good listener, or at least my supervisors see me as a good listener, and it shows in my work. You know, every time I have managed to speak up or have had something to say, I've never felt like I was ever put down for that for any reason that relates to race or gender. That being said, I do think there are still some subtle things that would have held me back a little bit during my career. Like, for instance, maybe just not being quite as taken in for mentorship, which usually seem to fall under, I think, those who look just like the supervisors that we would work under together. They tend to have a little bit more of like a bro-y kind of together feel. And for me, I think moving forward, technically, my voice would not be heard in the more subtle ways that I think others would. So if I asked for help, certainly somebody would give me help. But for me, I would always have to learn things on my own without having somebody else really take the prerogative to really train me up.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Earl? Same question. Do you believe your voice has been given as much value in your colleagues during your career?
I think that it has, but I would say that I had to earn it. In the beginning, that voice maybe wasn't trusted, but when you save someone a few times, maybe you're saving the VFX loop that has the position, and they're maybe not achieving something in the same way that the director wants, and then they'll ask me and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And then I'll give them fix to a problem, then they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't see it that way." So I think over time you earn that trust. It may take longer because they may assume that you may not know what you actually know. And I was told by a producer once that even though I was in the room and sitting quietly, everybody knew that I knew the answer to the question, and was basically waiting to be asked what do you think about this? And I would speak, and it would be the correct answer. So you would tend to have to earn that trust.
Yeah.
And then you'd be trusted all the way. But the assumption would maybe be that you didn't know that first.
Understood.
Yeah.
Maricel, this is for you. How do you think that the current industry climate will affect underrepresented people in our industry?
Well, I think that this past year, you've seen the proliferation of studios and opportunities for more diversity of voices. So I think because of that, hopefully, and I'm just optimistic that there's a little bit more openness for people to listen and hire proactively others who they haven't seen. Just stretching on Leslie's point about learning nuances. I think for communities of color, we are often, at least for me, I struggled in the very beginning about how to communicate. I mean, it's always hard to communicate well, but to learn and understand the sort of rituals and routines and sort of nuances in the room when you are the only person of color there. So it's learning those cues, and then how to give feedback. I always have found that I have to really pay attention to what those dynamics are before I feel confident about speaking. Whereas, other colleagues just pipe right in and almost, shoot from the hip. But just like, Earl's comment that, it has to be earned. And I think that for all of us, it's being, brave enough to take that and, put it out there. And I think that the current industry, if you are proactive and you find that you have to push a little bit more harder for people to listen and then respond, but it is a back and forth, and it's a negotiation, both giving critique, trying to rally the groups. I mean, it's very different because I've worked in like very tight communities where, it's sort of understood, but when you are dropped into a situation where you're the only brown face, then it's a little bit more harder. But I think it is much more open. I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, that's very encouraging, and I'm just looking at you guys. It's like the epitome of like excellence. I mean, you guys are so awesome at what you do. It just seems like we had to just do so much more to get the same. And I still keep going back to my favorite scene in Scandal where he says you have to be twice as good in order to just be half as much. And I know people, I don't think people understand that, how true that is on every level. Like, I mean, we were told by our parents because, well, at least my parents, it's just having to just, there's no, what I found, there was really just no margin of error. I guess, I don't know if you guys felt that way, like you had to be perfect. Like if you made that one error, that was it for you, and you seemed like your colleagues or people you're surrounded with got more than one, like you had that one chance because we allowed you to kind of be on the table, but you can't make a mistake. And I don't know, I experienced that personally. I don't know, anyone is able to kind of speak to that if you've felt similar in your career as well.
Yeah, it's still true today.
Yeah.
It is still true. I've experienced what you're talking about, Audrey, where I was working on a production where it was like a high pressure show, and I was known for being able to deal with an incredible amount of stress, like being put in really tough situations, being able to handle it. And I remember there was one show where I raised my voice just a bit once in 2 years on that show, and everybody, remember that day, like, oh, do you remember that day when Roll got, a little, testy, and it was never forgotten. So you cannot, you cannot make a mistake once, like even once, just one time. It will be remembered, because coming from someone of color, it just feels a little bit different. So something that I've had to navigate is just always being really even keel, cool at all times, even in very, very, very stressful situations. So I've been sort of known for being able to handle a lot of stress, and I think it's just that we've learned how to manage stress in a different way, because we're always dealing with stresses, right? So our stress tolerance is a little bit higher. So we won't have that reaction that most people will have. We'll be able to deal with a lot more. But we do have to walk that tightrope to always be on, like always keep it together.
Yeah. So Sheena, you manage large teams and you've been doing it for a while. When you give direction, is it looked at differently than your male counterparts, or you're kind of put into like the shrew category, or like, how dare you raise your voice, or why are you acting that way? I just want to hear your thoughts on how you deal and cope with that.
Yeah, interesting. I don't raise my voice. I tend to kind of get more disappointed than anything else, I think, with people when they can't achieve what I'm trying. I think one of the skills that you need as a visual effects supervisor is to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to communicate really, really well, because sometimes you're describing really complex, nuanced ideas to like large teams of people, like the people who work for you in the visual effects industry, but you're also communicating with the director, you're communicating with the DP, you're communicating with the production line, the DP, the costume designer, special effects people, and you have to know their jobs almost as well as they do, or they won't respect you. Or you won't have it. If you walk on a set and you start, like I just worked with Bob Richardson. If you walk on a set with Bob Richardson and you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to, how to light something or the nuances of it, and, so on and so forth, you won't get the time of day, you won't get respect, and then you won't actually be able to do your job, and you'll become something that will sort of be a cog in the wheels for the team of visual effects people, because you won't be able to communicate to that person how you need it to be so that we can execute the job that we need to do. Now, that said, do people listen to you? Do you have to fight to be heard? Is there an instant where people take a look at you and you don't fit the idea of what a visual effects super is supposed to be? Yeah. And then every time you do a job, even though you've done, massive blockbuster films for all the major studios, you have to prove yourself every time without question. Like, I'm not going to walk in the room. People aren't just going to immediately trust what I say, what I do, what I think. And so, that's quite a big challenge. So there's a series of challenges to communicate as a VFX supervisor, because you've got that sort of level of communication on set where you have to be able to have the eyes of a DP and the vision of a director and the holistic view of a producer, and then be able to get right down into details of things with the visual effects team that you're then working with. Now, it's an interesting question that you asked, because isn't it easier to communicate with like-minded people? So when I'm on in a meeting, or like right now on a Zoom, and I'm the only woman and I'm the only person of color in the creative leading team, yes, it's very difficult to be understood. It's very difficult to communicate. Yes, people have come back and said to me, I don't understand why they're not understanding what you're asking them to do, because it's really clear to me and it's really obvious. I think it's a patriarchy problem. I've literally had people say that to me, you know, within the last year.
Yeah.
So there's, and I sort of think about it and I go, is it the work from home thing? Is it people maybe being nagged by their wives and then I represent, you know, that same sounding voice? Or, you know, is it the pitch of the voice? Like, is there something that shifts in the brain? Like, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but, you know, it's definitely yes. It's something that I experience and I think about, and I don't really know what the solution is, because obviously none of you guys have the problem, you know, and there's lots of people who don't, but it just takes a handful of people who do.
Yeah. No.
And it breaks everything.
No, that's fantastic. So Leslie, you know, Star Trek Discovery is like, you know, based upon all of its behind the scenes. It seems really diverse. You know, the director is a person of color. You know, the stars people of color. You know, has that been your experience? Does that go all the way down to post-production? I mean, like, you know, it seems very inclusive on that show. Does it feel different than what you used to work with, or is it better or worse or the same?
Well, for me, I guess in relation to that show, it's a little bit different only because, you know, as a vendor side visual effects supervisor, I deal directly with the the client side visual effects supervisor there, in which, because I am the representative of the company that's working for them, they definitely listen, and that's great. But I would say that I find a little bit more difficulty, say, with dealing with artists and coordinators on even like an office level. So things that Sheena has described there, I do feel like I've come across that throughout the history of the teams that I've led. And I can't figure out if sometimes is it the way that I look like a very young person. I've got, I don't know, very not like stoic enough features, perhaps, that if I give you a creative note that maybe sometimes is even word for word what the client has asked us to do, that I'll still get some bizarre pushback or some bizarre hostility that I'll then send, say, one of my leads or another colleague who perhaps more resembles a more, I guess, traditional leadership figure. And they'll literally say the same exact thing. And somehow that's not met with the same kind of hostility or the same kind of, I guess, just aggression towards what I had given, you know. And I've gone around and around with like talking to my peers who I do trust, you know, did I say this in a way that was too mean? Did I say this in a way that was unclear? Did I say this in a way that was inappropriate and that would make this person feel like I've undermined them? Yeah. And each time it sometimes becomes, they'll throw back at me that it's probably a woman thing. Yeah. Which is so hard to fix because that's such a subtle underlying issue.
But it's not really your job to fix, right? I mean, that's also we get into, like, look at all the extra energy you have to put into you have this incredible, you guys, all of you have this incredible job to do, but you have this extra layer of translation that you have to use some mental capacity and energy in order to work through, which seems untenable to me at times. But, you know, that's the extra work, I think, that is inherent, and just because we're, you know, POCs and women, or just just being the other, which I find just makes it just harder.
True, but that injustice still kind of sits with you, you know, and in my position, at least I can never hire them again. And then the solution is fixed, at least within my own little globe, you know, and you know, that's the great thing about being a supervisor. I can just craft my team how I want it. But, you know, there's still that long length of time that I still need to work with those figures that are posing some opposition. And, you know, that does, for me at least, that does kind of last, because I know that's out there. I know that it's a thing that I couldn't convey in a way that felt fair as other colleagues can do.
Yeah, that's true. Well, listen, you guys, we're almost out of time. I can't believe it. But is there anything you want to add or contribute before we have about a couple more minutes?
I want to add something quickly to what Leslie had just said. I'll be very quick. I've been in that situation before where someone is just not, you know, or you're getting that resistance, and I process it in the way that it's happening outside of you. It's more happening in their head. So I just kind of, you know, have to find a way to sort of readjust and reapproach that. person and just kind of find a way to connect with that person to try to not get that response. But I completely hear what you're saying. I've experienced exactly that too.
Yeah, it was really interesting, I thought, listening to Leslie when she was speaking, because one of the things that I heard her saying was, something that I think is like, you're constantly trying to figure out how to solve the problem, and it isn't you, it's them, but you take it on as like, oh, how do I fix this? What do I do? What am I not doing that I could do differently? And, I don't know if everyone else sort of feels that way, or if that's maybe just something that women do, is sort of take on this responsibility of needing to fix things and understand them. But I don't know how the rest of you guys feel.
I mean, for me, it depends on the situation. Sometimes I do feel a need to try to address it, but in the position that I hold, I have a lot of autonomy in my organization. So, there's really only so much resistance before that person doesn't work here anymore. so, it's a little different, admittedly, but, and I fought to get to this level. But there are times when I've definitely, had to go back and, I was thinking to myself, like, what is it? Something I said? Like, could I have said this better? And then I've definitely seen my counterparts seemingly unfazed by saying it the way they said it, and they've moved on and not given a second thought. So there are definitely differences for sure.
Yeah, if I could chime in, I would say that, like, at the supervisor level, I think all of us are probably very good communicators. So, when I encounter resistance like that, I'll think about how I said something. I also tend to I'm a very visual thinker, so I'll try and, like, very clearly visually, interpret what I'm saying as well. But, like, the tack that I've learned to take is try to think about what their issue is. Like, where are they coming from? What are their goals? Like, do they see me as an obstacle to that? Or, so I don't think it's me in most cases. I don't know if that's arrogance, but I think to be, when you're supervising multiple teams, not only do you need to be able to effectively communicate the client's needs to the teams, but often the teams, you have to facilitate communication between the teams themselves.
Yes.
So we're all probably very good communicators. So, I try and look at it from, like, okay, what are their issues? What are their goals? So it's not really something I need to fix. It's something I need to understand in them to help them address.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, listen, you guys, this has been amazing. I'm so happy to see you. It's like my whole world is coming together. I love it. I love it. It's so great seeing you guys and participating. I really appreciate it. And look, I wish you guys a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back here again in February. Going to be focusing on virtual production, which will be very exciting. So bringing some folks back in. But look, I want to thank each and every one of you for lending your talents and being just incredible as you are. And thank you so much. And I wish you all the best. I know you guys are going to go out and be amazing because you're already amazing. All right. And you guys take care. And thanks everyone for watching. And we'll be back. Thank you. Appreciate it. You guys.
Thank you.
So much. That was great.
Thank you, Audrey, and the team over there.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, guys.